When I was little, my favorite shows were the superhero cartoons. There was something about them that resonated with me, not to mention they were fun to watch. Even years later, I still feel the lasting effect of these shows when it comes to the way I view current superhero media. Even if not groundbreaking, these shows were incredibly well done. And as I got older, there was a shift in superhero media. The MCU became the biggest moneymaker in the box office, which set a precedent. Now superhero media was live action, movies and shows. The animated ones still existed, but were relegated to direct releases and kid shows, which I believe was a huge mistake, because superheroes work better in animation. Full stop. End of the conversation. Okay, not full stop since I actually need to explain this, but there's no but to this. In all aspects, animation is superior to live action when it comes to adapting superheroes. Animation is the natural choice for the drawn medium. It looks better and it breeds ingenuity into this storytelling. It's just a better fit for the make-believe genre. Let's start with the easy reason: suspension of disbelief. When watching anything, you enter an agreement with the piece of media that you will suspend your disbelief at the improbable actions that are about to take place. The reason this is an issue with superhero media comes in two parts: in and out of mask and special effects. In and out of mask is referring to the hero being in hero mode and civilian. Think Batman vs. Bruce Wayne. In the cartoon, nothing changes aesthetically when these characters change between modes. They look the same, and the stylization of the characters remains the same. In live action, this becomes more of an issue. Civilian versus hero mode often looks like they've come from two different shows. The low stakes of their civilian lives read like a situational drama versus the high stakes of saving the day. This is exacerbated by the special effects. Civilian mode is usually calm and collected. Little effects are needed, while in hero mode, a lot of effects and costuming can then break the suspension of disbelief because they are so polar to each other. Again, animation doesn't need to deal with that issue because the style doesn't change in between modes. There is also the fight for realism. Realism is, boiled down, the replication of the real world into the screen. Live action is realism because it's physically taking place in the real world. Realism in animation is different. It's up for interpretation on what is considered realistic, because it's not limited by the physics of our world. That's hyper-realism. Realism can be a replication of lived experience or emotion. Superhero animation takes on realistic properties. There is a level of continuity that holds throughout the narrative, there is a consistent style, and the stories tend to be plot or character-driven, but it doesn't take on the hyper-realism of our world. Characters follow the laws of their world and interact without bouncing into issues like the laws of physics. In superhero media, there are three key visual aspects that definitely work better in animation: character design, powers, and fight scenes. Character design is an essential part of comic book history. Characters could have upwards of 80 years of history that goes into their designs. While most of it remains relatively unchanged, only updating with the decades, that is still a lot of design to deal with. Animation gets away with this easily. Whatever era of comics they're replicating, they can just copy verbatim. But how many live-action films and shows have run into criticisms after changing the suit to make it more realistic? Hawkeye is wearing a standard military-style outfit in contrast with his purple ensemble from the comics. Scarlet Witch wears a red coat and Quicksilver's in a tracksuit. I have zero idea what is going on with Starfire's costume in Titans. And when they do try to do comics accurate, it looks off. Flash, Hawk and Dove, Nightwing. And let's also not forget about the fun fact that these costumes are often uncomfortable, hot, and restrictive. Michael Keaton's Batman costume was so poorly designed that he couldn't twist his neck. Not the greatest when it comes to fighting crime. Animation doesn't have to worry about the realistic laws of physics with the costume. Batman's cape can be weirdly long. Women can fight in bathing suits. We aren't questioning how certain technology exists because we aren't fighting the rules of reality. Quickly looking again at Hawk and Dove, their costumes are a lot. Even in the show, it seems ridiculous, but it still fits. The show does lean into the comics, and so the weird cape Hawk has is kind of just glossed over, and Dove's whole thing again just works. In Titans, it's just weird. First, trying to adapt costumes from the late 1960s into such a dark-tinted modern show was never gonna go well. But considering how not even all the characters have their costumes, they could have easily glossed over the whole costume thing. And not only are cartoons able to be accurate with costumes, they can stretch the characters' proportions to match the style from the comic books. Everyone kind of has a working idea that comics are not proportionate, which means live action just can't replicate it. Superman is supposed to be a god among men, especially in the movies. I kind of think it depends if you find Henry Cavill attractive. In animation, you can feel the godlyhood, but in that same token, he doesn't feel out of place. The other heroes are being animated to match the style. And I haven't even touched on the whole issue where a character doesn't look human. There's the Martians from DC. In the live-action Supergirl, John Jones is often seen in camouflage mode, only revealing the Martian side in dramatic fights. In comparison, his animated version is almost always green. There's Brainiac, Vision is very touch and go. The only thing green about Beast Boy is his hair. And then there's that scene with Mystique from X-Men First Class.
To look normal, and you're only half paying attention to whatever else you're doing. Just pointing out something that could save your life.
Often the reasoning behind these choices are because it is more cost effective, less time is spent on makeup or special effects. But the point of these characters is that they don't look normal. Their designs as heroes revolve around their non-humanness. Going off the non-humanness, powers are another big issue. Sure, CGI and practical effects do a decent job, but they never quite look right. Some look okay, but for the more abstract powers, shapeshifting, telepathy, invisibility, different forms of magic, elasticity, willpower, how do you make that look real without entering the uncanny valley? In live action, it's a combination of special effects and practical effects, and it depends on the budget of the movie or show that will determine the believability of these powers. Elasticity is easiest to see the difference, looking at DC's Plastic Man and Marvel's Mr. Fantastic. The live action looks strange, it's too rubbery and kind of disturbing, almost to the point that suspension of disbelief is just completely broken. In animation, the powers look normal, easily fitting into the style as animation allows the stretch. Shapeshifting is another difficult power to portray, despite its popularity. We'll often have the camera focusing on another character, moving the shapeshifter out of frame, the camera may cut, or the characters will hide to transform. It's essentially concealing the transformation. In animation, there are no barriers. Characters can transform multiple times in a scene, even during fight scenes. And then there's the big thing, the fight scenes. Let's take a look at some live action fight scenes. Notice anything? These scenes are usually hard to visually follow or they feel lackluster. You have these supposed titans of humanity and these fights seem more like the play fighting that happens in the schoolyard. What about animated fights?
Sorry, pal. Crash my party. You get bounced. I destroyed you.
You may want to reassess that assertion.
A lot more dynamic and a lot easier to follow. Fight scenes are naturally going to be chaotic, as with every character that is added, the more the attention of the camera gets split. The advantage of animation is the animator will be moving frame by frame, able to control every little aspect of the scene. The fights then become clear and structured, easy to follow each character, and a pleasure to watch. As a bonus, you can feel the power in these fights.
And show you just how powerful I really am.
You can destroy a planet with very little issue since there isn't the blockade of CGI budgeting and time constraints. Plus, animated fights remove the liability of injury as there is no need for stunt double, an actual issue plaguing Hollywood in general. There is also in animation this strange sense that it can be more violent and terrifying even when directed at children because it's animated. Animation is both limitless and limited. Anything can be created, but it must be created by the animator. The imagery they can produce is near impossible then to recreate in live action. You have the haunting image of the Joker smile from Batman the Animated Series, this scene of Raven and Slade from Teen Titans.
Drink it in.
How about the death of Robin's parent? Alright, I've used multiple examples and tackled many different points. These shows get creative in order to show the devastation. Let's bring it all together for the ultimate proof that superheroes belong in animation.
That way.
Released in 2018 by Sony Animation, this beautifully animated movie combines 3D CGI animation with traditional hand-drawn animation. It's a love letter to the comics that come before. Every frame of this film is jam-packed in a way that could not be possible in live action.
We fell in love with the half-toning, the hatching, and the line work. We were really inspired by Jack Kirby's illustrations. He has the Kirby crackle or Kirby dots that he uses a lot.
We'll see these dots as a motif through the entire movie.
Spider-Verse feels like a comic come to life. The drawn lines to stylize the characters' emotions, the use of color blobs to populate New York, pop art frames scattered throughout the scenes, using color misprint as a way to create camera focus, animating on twos to allow that comic book movement to shine through. We also see onomatopoeias and text bubbles fitting into the stylized image of the film, and of course, the Kirby dots. Kirby dots, developed by influential comic artist Jack Kirby, were often used to showcase forms of power. In Spider-Verse, we see the Kirby dots used constantly, but most prominently in the final battle, where the Kirby dots are used to showcase the power of the collider. The dots change colors. We focus on each individual during the fight. The color palette change is important to the character design. The film centers on Miles Morales and his dimension. From other dimensions, we have Peter B. Parker, Gwen Stacy, Spider-Noir, Penny Parker, and Spider-Ham. Each of these characters are given their own style and color palette. While Miles, Peter B, and Gwen all come from similar dimensions, they are still given unique color palettes to identify them. The other three are where things get trippy. Spider-Noir is both inspired by old-time comics and film noir.
Is he in black and white?
Where's that wind coming from? We're in a basement.
Penny Parker is anime inspired, and compared to the Western style of the other characters, you would think she'd stand out. Instead, the bright and colorful atmosphere works with her. Spider-Ham is a literal cartoon.
It can get weirder.
I feel like that covers it. While stuck in this dimension, they still follow the rules of their own in a strange collision of aesthetics. But it works, and only in a way that animation can. In live action, it would be near impossible to have these different styles of spider people. Animated superhero media allows itself to be an extension of the comics, and to be its own thing. There isn't a constraint to appease the audience, because when walking into these animated movies and shows, there is an understanding that what you are seeing is a connection to the comic world. Like I stated earlier, animation is both limitless and limited. The animation that I've been talking about is about entertainment, but it is also about emotions, about conveying these complex themes and placing them in engaging stories. Realism in animation isn't about replicating the real world. It's about the lived experiences that we relate to. Friendship, family, love, but also loss and hurt. Animation is allowed to be faithful to the source material and push the boundaries any way it seems fit. It can pack meaning into just simple lines in a way that live action can't. Superheroes were created by paper and ink. Is it not reasonable that their home is in animation?